The NCAA proved once again that they simply cannot do the right thing.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I'm John Williams of Sooners Wire. And on today's show, we're going to break down some key returning players. One guy in particular that ESPN believes is the key for Oklahoma. I'm going to give you my guys that I believe that are key on both sides of the ball for the Sooners that are coming back from the 2025 season. We're also going to talk through Steve Lasson's quarterback rankings from the SEC over from Athlon Sports. But we got to start here. The NCAA denied Owen Heineke's appeal for an extra year of eligibility. No real reason's been given just yet, but this is an unsurprising move. As we've seen the NCAA work through these processes over the years, it's not surprising to see them deny an appeal. They typically will deny the petition, which happened, and then we have to see these things go to court in order for them to play out favorably for the player. The NCAA is not just going to give free eligibility, it seems, aside from maybe some guys that have legitimate injury cases. Owen Heineke's petition and his appeal to the NCAA was, hey, listen, I played 3 games, a total of 15 minutes of lacrosse at Ohio State before, ever stepping foot on a football field, and wanted to get one more year of eligibility based on that. And it's reasonable to think that he should get another year of eligibility. I think those 15 minutes of 3 games of lacrosse, it shouldn't weigh the same way that a season of college football does. And listen, I get wanting to get that year back, and I understand also the NCAA's attempt to try and put some guardrails on the sport, which seems to be a free-for-all in eligibility. But the issue that I think I have and most people have with this is just the inconsistency that we see from the NCAA when it comes to these eligibility battles. You see, yes, these guys have to go to court, the Joey Aguilars, the Trinidad Chambliss, but you see players at smaller programs, D2s, getting like 7th, 8th, 9th years of eligibility, all because of injury issues. To me, what's the difference? You're still giving a guy an extra year to take up a roster spot for a high school player that hasn't really done anything except be injured and take advantage of those medical red shirts. Well, why can't we make an exception for a guy who has really only been a special teamer up until this last year? And again, those 15 minutes over 3 games of lacrosse, should it equate? Should it count against him like that? And man, I just don't think it should. We see guys come back and yes, you get the eligibility and there are rules and guidelines in that, but you see them make exceptions all the time to the rules. Now it's a matter of, does Owen Heineke and his team want to take this to court and fight a suit? I just don't know. It seemed like the base and that team was just going to rest on whatever the NCAA's decision was. And because it took so long for the petition to be recognized and decided on, and then the appeal to be decided on, we're at a point where it's NFL Combine week. And Owen Heineke finally got a little bit of clarity as to his collegiate future. And I think we're probably at this point where it's Owen Heineke's off to the NFL. And I hate to say that. I would love to get Owen Heineke back for another year, but with as big a week as he has ahead of him, from his testing to the interviews, all of his focus needs to be on that. Because if he goes to the courts and he appeals to a court in Oklahoma to grant an injunction or a temporary order against the NCAA, that takes time. The court hearing takes time. The decisions take time. And all of that could disrupt his preparation for the NFL draft, and leave him in a little bit too much limbo when it comes to the draft in April. Is it possible that a decision from a court could happen and all of the appeals processes could be exhausted by the time we get to the NFL draft at the end of April? Yeah, it's possible. At the same time, can Owen bank on everything moving that quickly to where every NFL team is going to have clarity about his future? That's the part that's really difficult for us to look at. And listen, he's going to be a draftable prospect. He's somebody that's going to test incredibly well at the NFL draft combine. He's somebody that coaches, general managers, front office personnel. They're going to love Owen Heineke, whether it's position coaches or defensive coordinators. They're absolutely going to love him. They're going to be ecstatic to have him as part of their defense. And so the issue really is, it's just time. Owen Heineke is going to be a great NFL player. He's going to be somebody that has a long career in the NFL, whether that's as a starter or as a special teamer. He's going to carve out a role as somebody's, at the very minimum, third, fourth linebacker on the depth chart, because he can play well. He's got the speed to play Mike. He's got the physicality and the aggressiveness. And again, he's going to be somebody who's going to be a core special teamer for teams. Remember, they only get 53 roster spots. And on game days, unless they've changed the rules, since I haven't been covering the NFL in a while, they don't get to dress all 53. And that means you have to have guys that are capable of contributing on special teams. And Owen Heineke is absolutely one of those guys that can contribute. And it's a bummer that he doesn't get to come back and play one more year for the Oklahoma Sooners. I would love to see 38, blitzing quarterbacks, throwing that thumbs down and, celebrating. It was a blast to watch him in 2025. He became a fan favorite for the way that he played the game. It's just unfortunate that we're not going to get to see him one more year as a Sooner, but hey, hopefully your favorite NFL team gets to draft him. I don't know if I want to wish him going to the Dallas Cowboys, because listen, we're a team that's struggled, but I'm sure he'd be happy to land with whatever team ends up picking him, but he's going to be an asset wherever he lands. And so, best of luck this week at the NFL Draft Combine. Owen Heineke, go kill it like I know you're going to, and go impress all the people that you got to impress to see yourself picked. I think he could be a top 100 pick in the NFL draft because of his traits. He's got speed, athleticism, physicality, a lot of the things that these coaches are looking for. But what does it mean ultimately for Oklahoma? Well, I feel like they've been planning on life without Owen Heineke, that if he was going to return, it was going to be icing on the cake. It was going to be the extra gravy on your chicken fried steak. It was going to be all good, but they were planning and preparing for the reality that maybe he's not back. And that's where Cole Sullivan comes in. You're going to start Kip Lewis. You're going to start Cole Sullivan. And now you're banking on progression from James Nesta and Marcus James. You've got to see those guys step up and become significant parts of that four-man linebacker rotation. And you're going to get pushed by your young linebackers that you brought in the 2026 class. Jandro, Jacob Curry, Dane Bathurst, Christian Moore. This is a good group of players that are going to push for special teams time, for two deep time. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen. Spring ball will give us a little bit of an indication on guys who might be able to contribute early in their Oklahoma career. But yeah, it comes back to, it was huge that Kip Lewis returned. It was a huge pickup that you got Cole Sullivan, and you're going to need James Nesta and Marcus James to take a step in their development and become parts of that four-man rotation. All right, Steve Lasan of Athlon Sports released his way too early SEC quarterback rankings. We're going to go over that, where John Mateer landed, and one of the major issues I have with his and what's going to be a trend all offseason in quarterback ranking land. We'll discuss all that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. And here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole shebang. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And today's episode is also brought to you by our friends over at TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out your forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert did not file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Hey, once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you want more Locked On Sooners with less ads, go check out the Everydayer Club, lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer club, or you can go to lockedonsooners.supercast.com for $5 a month or $50 per year. You can get ad-free audio of Locked On Sooners and an invite to a members-only chat featuring Jay and I and members of the Everydayer Club, as well as hosts from across the Locked On network. So go check that out. Again, $5 a month, $50 a year over at lockedonsooners.supercast.com. And if you've noticed, we're in some different surroundings for today's show. That's because, and if you've noticed that we've got a little bit different digs for today's show, it's because I'm down visiting my mom and dad, and we got to stay in a hotel for a little something my dad's got going on Wednesday. But we'll be back in normal recording stuff later this week. But that's why we're sitting in a laundry room at the hotel. Tried to record in a different area, but there was a lot of extra noise that was not going to make this work out very well. So thanks for bearing with us. And again, for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every day. Jay will be back next week to keep talking all things and get us ready for spring ball as we do things here every day on Locked On Sooners. Steve Lasson released his way too early SEC quarterback rankings for the 2026 season. And John Mateer came in at number 7 on the list, just ahead of, we'll just give you the 3 players behind him. Kamario Taylor from Mississippi State at number 10, Austin Simmons, who was at Ole Miss and is now at Missouri at number 9, and then Byron Brown, the South Florida transfer who followed Alex Golish over to Auburn. Mateer comes in just behind Sam Leavitt from LSU, who was at Arizona State, Lenora Sellers from South Carolina, and Marcel Reed at Texas A&M. Again, Mateer at number 7. And I don't really have much issue with that. I think, John Mateer comes into the 2026 season with something to prove. He was a guy that was up and down. Yes, you can point to the thumb injury as a reason why he had some down moments last season. He also dealt with some lower body injury where he was a little bit banged up, and that affected him. I mean, it affected his ability to throw off of a good platform. It affected his ability to grab the ball and grip the ball and really let it rip. But as he got healthier throughout the course of the 2026 season, his ability to let it rip got a lot better. And he looked better, in the LSU game, aside from 3 picks, a couple heat checks, and that's just the way it goes. And then in the Alabama game, throwing that pick 6, but otherwise looked really good in that Alabama game. So I expect that when spring ball rolls around, he's going to be a whole lot more comfortable throwing the ball, gripping the ball when the 2026 season comes around. And he's going to be even more comfortable gripping the ball, throwing the ball, getting the ball down the field. And what I've felt like for this season, this offseason in particular, the thing that John Mateer has to improve upon is just that foundation. Getting back to doing the simple things really well, getting back to the basics. good footwork, clean footwork, throwing from a strong base consistently. Yes, you can throw off platform. You're really good at that. Yes, you can throw with weird arm angles. Fine. But let's make sure that that's not all we're doing. Let's make sure that when the pocket is clean and I'm able to really step into it, that I've got my feet set and I'm stepping into it. Let's make sure that, hey, I don't have to throw with a weird arm angle. Cool. I'm going to make sure I use proper arm mechanics to get the ball out and get it out on time and accurately. So just honing in on some of the finer details of playing the quarterback position, having those fundamentals, that's one of the things that and we'll talk about Arch Manning in a little bit more detail here in a second, but for the detractors of Arch, the one thing you can say about him is that he's got really good fundamentals. And that's going to happen when you grow up in a family where Archie Manning's your granddad and Peyton and Eli are your uncles. You're going to grow up with really good fundamentals. So you rarely see Arch Manning throwing from bad platforms. And whether you're a hitter in baseball or a shooter in basketball or a quarterback in football, they're going to tell you, and you can throw pictures into this, they're going to tell you that it all starts from the ground up. It's all about how you set yourself from your feet to your knees to your hips before you ever throw the ball. What your lower body does often can determine what happens with your upper body. And yeah, the dude is able and very capable of throwing off platform, throwing on the run. We saw the dime he threw to Xavier Robinson in the playoff game. Unfortunate that X-Rob didn't catch it, but he's got that ability to make those kind of plays. It's just, hey, I got a clean pocket. Let me get comfortable here and let me throw comfortably, as opposed to making things harder on myself because I am relying on this ability to throw off platform or throw from weird angles or throw sidearm. Like, don't rely on that stuff. Use it as a tool in your arsenal, but don't make that the base from which you're throwing. Get back to doing the simple things simply. All right, a little bit. So again, I don't have any issue with John Mateer coming in at number 7. I don't think you could have put him behind, Byron Brown or Kamario Taylor or Austin Simmons. I don't think you could have put him behind Keelan Russell at Alabama or Aaron Philo. Florida, KJ Jackson, Arkansas, Kenny Minchie, 14 to Kentucky, and George McIntyre, Tennessee, Jared Curtis, Vanderbilt. So Mateer at 7, that's the lowest you could possibly go in any way too early SEC quarterback rankings. Anything below that, and I would take severe exception to. But you could make an argument for him ahead of Marcel Reed. I mean, Marcel Reed's one big game or two big games that he played last year against Texas and against Miami in the playoff didn't turn out so hot. He made some questionable decisions against Notre Dame where, hey, yeah, they won that game, but they almost lost it too. I think you could I feel like that's probably about it. Maybe Lenore Sellers because of how much he struggled last year, but the talent is still there. I think he's going to have a bounce back season in 2026. But my big issue here is just the top of it. Gunnar Stockton at 3, Trinidad Chambliss at 2, and Arch Manning at 1. I get the Arch Manning fascination. I get the excitement about what he's capable of and the potential. At this point in time, though, it's still just potential. He showed a whole lot more as the season went along, and the schedule was such that he didn't have to play some of the elite teams in the SEC week in and week out and go perform. He performed well in some really big games and some big moments, and I think he's a guy that's got an upward trajectory. But if you're projecting out who the best quarterback is going to be in 2026, okay, you can maybe make an argument that Arch Manning is going to be the best quarterback in 2026. Cam Coleman, Ryan Wingo, I like those two as a wide receiver duo. But if we're talking right now, who the best quarterback is in the SEC, to me, that's Trinidad Chambliss. He's the player that played the best ball, I felt like, throughout the 2025 season, and he's back. Sure, he doesn't have Lane Kiffin. Sure, he doesn't have Joe Judge. And still, he doesn't have Charlie Weiss Jr. Or maybe he does have Joe Judge. I can't remember what the offensive coordinator's name is at Ole Miss. He doesn't have Charlie Weiss Jr. as his offensive coordinator. But I still believe in the talent. I think he's the closest thing that we've seen to a Kyler Murray since Kyler Murray. I think this is going to be a guy that's going to be really good. Ole Miss offensive coordinator is now John David Baker, for those of you who are curious to know who the Ole Miss offensive coordinator is. I just think Trinidad Chambliss has proven, at least he did in the 2025 season, that he was the best quarterback in the SEC last year, going into this year. And he should be one of those guys that's one of the Heisman favorites. So I would put him above Arch. I might even put Gunnar Stockton above Arch at this point, simply because he's proven it more in bigger games. Both of those guys performed well in the college football playoff in big moments and battled. They're battle tested. They've proven they're talented. To me, it's one of those two guys as my pick for the top quarterback in the SEC. I'd go with Trinidad Chambliss. I'd go Gunnar Stockton. And then I'd go Arch Manning after that. Again, don't have much issue with where John Mateer is at, but I think he's one of those guys that could prove capable of being the top quarterback in the SEC in 2026. The Oklahoma Sooners certainly have given him the weapons to be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC in 2026. And a lot of that is also going to be due to a guy that's coming back for Oklahoma. Let's discuss Isaiah Sategna and more key returning players for the Sooners coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. South Carolina rolled past Ole Miss 85-48 to clinch a share of the SEC regular season title and lock down the number 1 seed in the conference tournament. The Gamecocks extended their win streak over Ole Miss to 21 straight. UCLA dominated Wisconsin 80-60 to secure its first outright Big Ten regular season championship in program history. The Bruins improved to 27-1 overall and remain unbeaten in conference play. And number 12 TCU stormed back from a 13-point fourth quarter deficit to beat Iowa State 80-73. The Horned Frogs now sit alone atop the Big 12 standings and are 1 win away from clinching another regular season conference crown. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed's data worldwide. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right hire to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And Max Olson of ESPN picked one key returning player for each of the top 25 in ESPN's way too early rankings for the Oklahoma Sooners. It's Isaiah Sategna, and I have very little to say against that. I think the biggest key returning player for Oklahoma is Kip Lewis, especially in the wake of the Owen Heineke NCAA decision. Kip Lewis coming back as the leader of your defense, the signal caller of your defense, the guy that brings the juice, brings the energy, the leadership, everything, all the intangibles, in addition to what he does as a playmaker, absolutely huge. I think Kip Lewis is the key returning player for the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, if you want to tell me offensively it's Isaiah Sategna, I can hear an argument for that. At the same time, you bring in Parker Livingston, you bring in Terrell Harris, you bring back Jermichael Carter, you bring back Elijah Thomas and Emmanuel Choice, and your top 6 wide receivers, Jacob Jordan's also back, your top 7 wide receivers, looks really good for 2026. Now, bringing back Isaiah Sategna brings back a speed element that is going to threaten defenses down the field, someone that every defensive coordinator has to take account of when they're game planning against the Oklahoma Sooners, and that's going to open up so much for Oklahoma in the short to intermediate passing game, as well as the run game. If teams are having to be concerned about the deep ball because Isaiah Sategna can run by a lot of guys on defense, they're not going to be able to attribute as many defenders to the box. They're not going to be able to stack up and try to slow down Oklahoma's running game. Now, Oklahoma's running game hasn't proven that it needs to be loaded up against. They are perfectly capable of stopping themselves and slowing themselves down. But that could change in 2026. I expect it to change. I expect it to be better. So when you're facing teams and you have lighter boxes, Oklahoma should be more effective running against those and then making defenses pick their poison. Are you going to play a too high shell and not let Isaiah Sategna or Parker Livingston or Terrell Harris beat you down the field? Or are you going to play 8 in the box and try and slow down Xavier Robinson, Torrey Blaylock, Jonathan Hatton, or DeZephan Walker? And so I think Isaiah Sategna is incredibly key to Oklahoma's offensive success this year. And listen, if he can go out and have another 900-yard year where he has 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, that's going to be huge. We know that John Mateer is going to look to him early, often throughout the season, and he's going to make big plays. The great thing about Sategna is he's able to make big plays in the same way that Marquise Brown was. He doesn't simply have to be a deep ball guy where you're just running goes and trying to run by everybody. He can be incredibly effective as well on those shallow drag routes that are going 2-3 yards down the line of scrimmage or little slants and pick up big yards after the catch. And so Sategna's ability to be a dynamic weapon in every area of the passing game just opens so much up, especially for those guys on the outside. If you know that Sategna is running from the slot, you might bracket him with a linebacker and your nickel player. Well, that just leaves less people to account for the coverage on the outside, opening up opportunities for Parker Livingston, for Terrell Harris. And shoot, Rocky Beers is going to be a beneficiary of this. Hayden Hansen is going to be a beneficiary of this. Over the middle of the field, where Isaiah Sategna is going to draw coverage, those guys are going to be able to have opportunities to sneak in over the top or underneath where Sategna is and make some catches and potentially make some yards after the catch. So yeah, I have no issue with Max Olson picking Isaiah Sategna as Oklahoma's key returning player, because he is an incredible weapon for the Sooners. And then that doesn't even factor in his punt return ability, where he was a game changer on that front. He flipped the field on multiple occasions and made opposing teams really think twice about kicking to him. He picked up 965 yards as a receiver, 318 yards as a punt returner. And this is what Max Olson says. The Arkansas transfer was a revelation for the Sooners in 2025, finishing third in the SEC in receiving yards with 965 yards and 8 touchdowns on 67 receptions as a go-to target for John Mateer and gaining 318 yards as a punt returner. Oklahoma getting Sategna re-signed to keep him out of the draft and the portal was a key win, as was getting edge rusher Adepoju Adebaware back on board after he briefly entered his name into the portal. Also a key return, because PJ is expected to be somebody that competes and starts for you at that other defensive end spot opposite of Taylor Wine. This has to be the breakout season for PJ Adebaware. Sategna would have had a lot of opportunity in the NFL draft. He's somebody that probably could have put himself in position to be a top 100 pick, simply because he would have blown up the NFL scouting combine. He would have had a great 40 time. He would have tested really, really well in the short shuttle stuff and the 3-cone stuff. He would have tested off the charts, and coaches would have really enjoyed interviewing him, getting to know him. And because of his ability on special teams as a punt returner, he would have been a very valuable piece to somebody's depth chart. Now, 2027, he'll likely be a top 100 pick. If he has another big year like he did this last year, and he makes people take notice of what he's doing on the football field this fall, very could easily turn himself into a top 50 or maybe even a first-round draft pick because of that blazing speed that he has. If he can continue to show that his route running is really, really good, he's got consistent hands, which I felt like got better as the season went along, then he's going to have a chance to really solidify himself as one of the best wide receivers in the 2027 NFL draft. And then for PJ, again, this is going to be one of those players that I think a lot of Oklahoma's defensive success is going to ride on his development. If he continues to improve, which he has over the course of his career, injuries kind of sidelined him a little bit early in his career. Last year, he looked really good in spurts where he was effective as a run defender. Now it's just a matter of taking that, building on that, and then becoming an impressive or dynamic or threatening pass rusher. Taylor Wine's going to get a lot of attention because of the season that he had a year ago. Somebody on the other side, Adepoju Adebawore, Danny Okoye, or others are going to have an opportunity to take advantage of the attention that Taylor Wine's getting on the other side, as well as the attention that David Stone, Jaden Jackson are going to be getting. So he is a key returner, maybe not more critical than Kip Lewis coming back, but he is still very critical to Oklahoma's success on the defensive side of the ball, especially as they try to replace R. Mason Thomas's pass rush ability, Marvin Jones Jr.'s run defense ability out there on the edge. You've got to find guys, PJ, Danny Okoye being the top two candidates, to replace that production, replace those snaps, and see Oklahoma's defense carry over what they did in 2025 into 2026. But it's going to take a whole unit. But I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see what this team is going to do despite some of the losses that we saw on defense. I think they still have a chance to be as good as they were last year. I'm not quite sure if they have a chance to be better than what they were last year. I think that is a lot to put on this defense right now, but I do think they have a chance to be at least as good. And even if they're not as good, with the improvements that we're expecting to see on the offensive side of the ball, they don't have to be as good. They just have to be good and maybe great at times. But this team on defense has the starting talent to do it. It's just figuring out what's the depth look like, especially along that defensive line. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow my guy Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, for more Oklahoma Sooners coverage. Follow me at John9Williams and read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer Sooner.